Okay, we're live. Hey, hello. This is Keith with How to Build Your Own Home. We are now live, or we're live.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
we are. My wife gives me the nod. We are now live. Welcome. This is Thursday. Every Thursday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We do a live where you can ask the general contractor any questions you have, and we do this for about an hour. A couple of things I want to talk about, because I always like it when somebody is live, and I hate it when let's just wait for everybody to show up and then we'll start. No, I just start. That way, other people who come in later on, they don't have to wait around. So I want to talk about something, and it has to do with the finances, the economics. Like, again, I am a general contractor. I look at the price of oil. I look at the price of interest rates. I look at futures contracts. I look at a lot of things like that help me see where I am with the cost to build. Because if I don't do that, I can get hit upside the head and it can be pretty nasty. I've been there before. It's not fun. So when it comes to 2024, it's an election year. So you can't just assume it's a regular year. It's not a regular year. Every 4 years, we elect major political office, especially the executive, and that's where everybody's most concerned with. Well, there's half of the equation that wants to maintain power, and they will do everything they can to make sure everything looks good and feels good, and they've got one political party has a lot of tentacles in just about everything you can imagine, including the central banks. So the central banks will make things look good this next year, but that's not what I want to focus on. If they drop the interest rate just a point and a half or even 2 points in my market, if they drop that interest rate just a point, it's like gangbusters here all over again. I'm in one of the number one places to live and retire in the United States, top 5 for the past 25, 20 years. And so when interest rates drop down, it's like everybody starts to refinance. Everybody wants to buy that home they want to get into. But that's not what I want you to focus on. There's a link in the description that you can go to later on. It's called The Virtual Capitalist, and it gives you a virtual understanding of all the real hard money, gold, silver, currency. And you look at right there, gold is about it's about a $9 to $10 trillion market cap, meaning of all the gold in the world, it amounts to about that much. But if you look over here to the far left, that's jewelry, and then the smaller section gets into actual minted coin. But that's not what I want you to see. There's currency, there's the S&P 500. When you really get down to it, way, way down here, this one here is the global real estate. That there blue big section is all the global real estate. It's actual valuation. Now, see that bigger square right there? Those are all the derivatives on your real estate. So what is a derivative? A derivative is, if you've ever seen these movies where they're taking odds on a fight that's going to take place, put 20 on Joe, put 20 on Mike, whatever it may be. Well, the derivative is somebody behind the scenes making a bet on the bet. And another derivative is a bet on the bet on the bet. And so derivatives can sometimes be futures contracts, swaps. You saw in 2008, there was the collateralized debt obligations. These are just bets on bets. These are side bets. Well, that there is in excess of $100 trillion. That's called a debt bomb. It's kind of like the TV series Get Smart. And there was a movie he came out with. It was called The Naked Bomb. I don't know if you saw that, but if the bomb went off, then everybody would be suddenly naked. It was a funny movie, but this here's a debt bomb. It's just lurking out there, and I want everyone to be aware of it, because when it goes off, it's a deflationary problem. It's like everything that you had now is not worth 100,000. It's worth 50,000, or it's worth 25,000. And then things start to go into an inflationary cycle. So we could go through wilder swings of inflation and wilder swings of deflation. That's what's really lurking out there. So if 2024 may look good because it's an election year, and if interest rates drop, it might be great for the builder side of you that wants to build something. But just keep in mind, there's something nasty out there. And that's what futures analysis is all about. knowing what's really lurking. If you're looking at a business and you want to buy a business, you want to find out what's their assets and liabilities. So their assets are, this business is saying that it's worth $1.2 million, but its assets are only about 250,000. The rest of it's are liabilities, meaning debts against that business. And so you want to keep that in mind. When you build a home, you want to make sure that you're not exceeding the debt obligation that you can handle or the debt that others can handle. This is something you want to look for. Study it out. Check out that link. It will be very surprising to you to see that the massive wealth that we think is wealth is not real wealth. It's just debt. And it's all based upon the real asset, our homes. And there's a book that I recommended in a previous interview post that I did the end of year report, or is it 2024 forecasted report? And there was a link to that book. I will put that link at the end of this as well. And it's called The Great Taking. It's a free book. You can download it. I actually had a student complain. I thought this was just a building site, not a conspiracy site. Well, it's not conspiracy theory. It's actual fact of what's really happening behind the scenes. So I suggest go to thegreattaking.com, download the book, read it for free. It's by a very, very intelligent man who really understood big finance and where money is flowing. And when money starts to flow, the velocity of money, it affects everybody. It affects construction first. When there's an economy that's slowing down, the first thing that gets pulled off the shelf is construction. Oh, we're not going to do that. We're not going to build that. I see it all over the place. So I see it first and I feel it first. My wife's a realtor. We feel these things faster and sooner than most people. So that's why we study these things. So study finance, economics, global economics. It's really going to be a great, great thing for you. It will make you feel like you're on top of it. Let's take some questions here. And then I have some other comments I'll bring up later as well. A comment by SM Build. Do you recommend attending the NAH Expo in Las Vegas at the end of February? It's always fun. It's huge. And so you can walk through it really fast and see a lot of ideas. If it's not hard to get to and you can afford it, and you might want a trip to Vegas, then I would go. I've actually learned a lot of technologies that are coming out and about. Like I learned about RedGuard before I even came into my market. These are things that are fun to look at, study, and you can talk with the sales reps, but just don't tell them you're an owner builder. You just say, I'm a builder from the Southwest or in New Mexico, whatever, and whatever, and they'll be happy to talk with you. That's the key, is to just make yourself look and sound like a builder. Yeah, go to that event. That'd be great. David B asks, the U.S. federal government pumping $6 trillion into the economy makes it impossible to predict what will happen. You said it very well. When they're pumping that kind of money into the market, it's like a high. It's like a druggy high. Oh, man, you don't know when you're going to crash. You just feel all this wonderful high. And that's exactly, I think, what 2024 is going to be. In fact, I got a push notification from Cliff High. He's kind of a very out there woo-woo guy, but he's very, very good at linguistic analysis. And he has all these bots that go out throughout the world, and they pick up on linguistic forecasting of what's in people's minds and stuff like that. And he's able to predict and give some predictions based upon his linguistic analysis. It's a lot of it high-end computer analysis, but Cliff High actually said that 2024 is going to be a crack-up boom. And then I was listening to just a bunch of like pastors and ministers, and lo and behold, they said the same thing in their prayers and in their meditations. And it's also predicted in a lot of the numbers right now. And even the Fed indicated that they actually have earmarked, I think it was 3 times next year, that they will drop interest rates. They didn't say when, but they indicated that there's 3 or 4 opportunities where they've slated, and the key word was slated, for interest rate drops in 2024. So again, it's all out there in the woo-woo land, in the spiritual realm, and then the actual hard facts of numbers. So That's what we're looking for in 2024. Jeff Whittingham. Keith, on your video, how to set the home in the perfect location, how did you set the foundation height? That's a good question. I usually, when I get my pad to make sure that I'm at least a foot off the center line of the street. That particular lot, I'm below the street elevation. So I have to bring in a lot of dirt to fill that in. It'll be city spec road base. Once I'm a foot above the street, that pad, that becomes my foundation. Then the actual foundation, the concrete, will be about 3 to 4 inches above that. Now that's typically code. You want that clearance because you don't want your wood framing structure to be below the dirt or even too close to the dirt. You want to have that clearance. And that's why I have for almost a 12-inch turn down on the foundation perimeter of my foundations, meaning that if this is a foundation board, and it could be a 2x10, could be a 2x12, 2x8, whatever it may be, and then I slough the dirt down into it, so it's a thicker concrete at the perimeter of that, and then of course the footing's way below that. That gives me my opportunity to bring up a lot of dirt to the outside of that, and I have about 4 inches of clearance, and that's where the code typically wants. Some places will say 6 inches, some will say 4 inches of clearance, and so long story short, I'll be about 4 inches over. I'll be 16 inches. I'll be 16 inches over the center line of the street. That's the actual foundation of the home. So, and if you add the subfloor after that and the flooring, maybe another ½ inch or so after that. Okay, another question.
This is just a statement two together.
I read 1/4 of the book. Very eye-opening. Recommend highly. Yes, please read the book. Add to the pumping, the minimum wage increases. Fast food in California is going to start at $40,000 a year. I didn't even make half that as a teacher when I started teaching years ago. David B. asks, if I'm going to build a home with a walkout basement on a hill, is it better to have more or less of the basement in the ground, like 9/10 to 10ths in, half in, less? Well, you're going to get more insulation, thermal mass protection if it's further into the ground. The problem you're going to have is on the sides of that house. You're going to have water that's going to want to come around that, and where's it going to go? And so I typically like it if you have a walkout basement, that the walkout part, there's no retainage. The retainage is on the sides of the home. So it's further back. So half of the home could be like 90% encased in concrete, maybe 80, between 50 and 80% of the home is encased into the hillside. The rest of it could be exposed. That's one thing that I like it, that ratio, because I'm controlling water flow a little better. Depending upon where your window wells are, that's going to be a big issue. If you have window wells on the ends of that home and you're going to have water coming around it, you might want to watch out for that. Again, it's site analysis, it's site programming, and really trying to assess the design for the land and what's the topographical stepping down of the land. How steep is it? These are all things that I would factor in. But watch your water flow. Watch out for that. Okay, Douglas, DB Douglas. I want a gravity septic. What things can guarantee it can be? Couple things. Site selection is the first one. Making sure that I would buy a lot or a home site that's more uphill, gradually uphill than downhill. No matter what you do, the septic has to be below the grade of the home. If it's above the grade of the home, then you're not going to have a gravity-fed septic. You're going to have a sump pump. And sump pumps are very, very, very tenuous. If your power goes off and for example, your water softener is running during the night and the power goes off and it gets kicked on, it doesn't go off, you flood your basement real quick, which is why you can't even put your water softener in the basement. So gravity fed is always the most ideal. And the key to it is to ask yourself, if the house is going to be here and the septic is going to be over here, I'm going to have a gravity fed situation. But if the septic is over here and the house is over here, I'm going to have to pump it up to the septic. And that's really what you want to think about. And septics take a lot of space. Don't think of it as just a tank. Think of it as leach fields, long 30, 40, 50, 60 feet long leach fields that take up an enormous amount of space. Think of it in those terms, and you'll say, okay, I need a larger lot because I'm going to have 5 bedrooms, and that's going to call for a bigger septic system. So a lot of questions there, but the septic has to be below the grade of the home. That's your key right there. John White, Keith, I know you're dry out there, but when do you return an LSL or LVL beam if it gets wet? Wet as in rained on or ally oak? Okay, but if sitting in water for how long? The LVLs can start to peel, so you want to get those back as soon as you can. The LVL beam, if it's a glulam, it shouldn't have any problem taking it back. I just had some beams that my carpenter stored them right next to the dumpster. So it was muddy, and they stepped on the beams to load up the dumpster and got all the beams all caked. The key is to keep them on wood, like, pieces of garbage 2x4s, and have all your beams sitting on there, not right on the dirt. And if you can do that, you can protect them and then put some tarps on them. And then when you take them back, they may charge you a 20 or 30% restocking fee. But if it's a special order situation, they may not take them back. So it's all about what the lumberyard will and will not do. So
How long, if it's been sitting, how long has it been sitting?
Well, if it's an LVL beam, OSB can take 3 hits of rain. Typical OSB is designed to take 3 hits of rain. A beam could take more than that, can maybe take 5 rainstorms, and you'd still be fine. But when it sits out there for more than 3 months over the transition of a season, then you got some problems. You don't want that to be a problem. They don't want it to look like it's been stepped on. They want it looking like it can be reused, and nobody wants to take a beam that's been sitting in somebody's yard and stepped on and mud all over the place and try to resell that. It has to look fresh and new. So keep it fresh and new, keep it covered.
But what if it was sitting in water? How long? 1 day, 10 days?
It depends. I'm in a dry climate, so when it rains, it just goes right through the ground. But if you're in an area where it puddles for 5, 10 days, get it off the ground, let it dry out real quick. If it still looks new, then take it back. And it's up to the lumberyard to decipher that. You don't need to tell them it's been sitting in water all this time. You just need to get it off the ground so air can move around it, and then keep it covered and then take it back. So, okay, next, David B. Can you call a 4th bedroom and office to get a little smaller septic field design? No. But there's ways around it. It depends on how that home is located. If there are no windows in that room, then you can't call it a bedroom. By code, you can't call it a bedroom. So you say, that's not a room, a bedroom. There's no bedrooms in it, and you don't want to put a closet because that's going to identify it also as a bedroom. So how I've dealt with that is I had a cabin home that I have designed, and I had a den right to the front entry of the home. And so they were going to require a larger septic, and so that could be converted to a bedroom. I go, it's a den, it's not going to be a bedroom. Oh, it can be converted to a bedroom. So we have to, let's just eliminate the doors. I got rid of the barn doors, so it's a 9-foot opening, and I called it a foyer. And as part of the foyer, the entry into the living area, and they said, okay, we'll reduce your septic because of that. I did the same thing upstairs on a build. I had 3 bedrooms up there, and they were going to size it for a huge septic system. I got rid of one of the bedrooms and called it a bonus playroom, and they got rid of the extra bedroom. It's tricky. If you're just all about labeling it and naming it and designing it and making it look like, oh, there's no way that could be a bedroom. And if you can do that and get away with it, then down the road, you do what you need to do. I think they oversize septics in ways that just drive me batty. Now, I can see it being an issue in the Southwest where you've got high water tables and all that. But I live in a high desert, and I've got very poor soils, and I've built some huge septic systems, and a lot of it I think is completely unnecessary. You could literally go to the leach fields on some of these septic systems that have been there for a long time, and you could cut into the leach field, and you can see that there probably would never be any moisture or any sewage or anything near the end of those leach fields. So I think they oversize them, and I think that's for their own protection and safety, but I do know they're oversized. Omar Trujillo, what is your, hope I said that right, Trujillo. That's a name I recognize from someone I know, a friend of mine. What is your charge price of a general contractor in charge of building a home in 60 days? In 60 days?
Build it in 60 days.
Can I build it? I could build it in 60 days if that's all I'm focused on.
No, because you have subcontractors. There's no.
If that's the only thing I'm focused on, then I would charge you 30%. But if it's not, if I don't have, if I can't charge that a higher price to get all the focus on it, then it'd be more like, 120 days. My fastest build is 4 months. But that was my own home. Owner builders can tend to be 12 months longer. So I'm right now between 15 and 20% I charge on the total cost of the home. So that's about where I'm at, depending upon how much I like the client and the complexity of the build and that kind of thing. John White says, Keith, do you have your electrician use copper SEU SEER cable between the meter box and your outside disconnect? Or is aluminum okay? Does your power company drop copper or aluminum cable to your meter? A lot of them drop aluminum. It's just more affordable, and they size it up for 1 aught, and that will service a 200 amp panel. I typically like copper. That's a good question. The problem is that copper is not as thick of a gauge. Aluminum is a thicker gauge. And so if you've got a conduit you're trying to fish something through, the aluminum is actually going to take up more of that space. I recently updated a panel for my son in the back, and we had almost a 1 aught, which is a really thick, they call it like a donkey cable. It's really thick cable, about that big. And we fished it all the way through there, but it still wasn't supplying to sufficient power. So we literally pulled 150 feet of that out of the conduit, and we fished smaller copper cables through that. Now we have an increase in amperage for him in the back. So that's the real advantage, is that you can up your amperage with copper. It's harder to do that with aluminum. But they will most likely drop an aluminum line to you if it's an overhead. They'll probably just do aluminum on that. So depends on what you're trying to do after the meter. So next question, Kedner Francis. Oh, I said that right, Kedner, sorry. I'm planning to build a 4,700 square foot home as an owner builder, waiting to receive plans I've purchased to send to an engineer. Any recommendations to a newbie? Yes, go to howtobuildyourownhome.com and subscribe and start the First Steps course, and then take the self-managed course. It's got a lot of information there: budgets, draw sheets, subcontractor agreements, you name it, everything you can imagine, checklists up the wazoo, and they're always getting better. If you're doing this as a newbie and you don't have any resource like that, you're going to run into a lot of mistakes. My course is designed to help you catch mistakes. In fact, my daughter called me today, and I did an estimate for a client, and I did it inside QuickBooks, and I didn't use my system. And she got mad at me. She goes, Dad, keep using your system. We don't make mistakes when we use your system. So I'm not going to be doing estimates on QuickBooks anymore. I use the system. I use the budget that I have designed, because it causes me not to make mistakes. I just go through the budget. Oh, I forgot that. I need to add a price for that. I need a price for that. So systems are where the money is. And if you don't have a system in place, you need one. So best of luck with that. Boss DeMaster. I like that. Boss DeMaster. It's a cool name. Taking your course and meeting with a prospective GC, they want to charge for the estimate. That seems reasonable given the time it takes. Should I be worried? Here's how I do it. Client comes to me, they want me to build a home, but I don't have any plans, so I can't give them an estimate. So I tell my clients I charge $2,500, and that helps me get on board sooner. So I work with your architect and your engineer. I get your soils and engineering all ready to rock and roll. And once I have architectural, structural, and all my geotech done, now I can get a budget. And then when the budget is presented to you, you can either do two things. You can say, great, we'll move forward. If we move forward, then the $2,500 goes toward the actual general contractor fee. If you don't move forward and you say, I didn't think it was going to be like this, and you don't move forward, then that's non-refundable. So anyone who charges you money for an estimate, especially in the market today, I wouldn't go there. I know some builders charge for it or want it, but I want you under contract. And that's the way the builder should be asking. They should say, well, let me get you under contract, and this will get you this far with a retainer. And then if you choose to move forward, then here's the additional cost. But to charge for an estimate now, I don't know about that. I would never do that to clients. I want them to have a choice, and I want them to know that my job as a builder is to help you get the design, engineering, all that done, get a budget, move forward with the build, and to get you moved into the building. That's my job. My job is not just to build something. My job is to put the whole contract together, to put all the pieces together. That's part of it. Now, if you don't want to allow me to move forward with the build because costs were just not what you thought they were going to be, then we part ways. But I've got a retainer that I've taken care of. Ask him if he'd be okay with a retainer. I just the more I think about that, I just don't like it, because it should be part of his. Ask him if you end up moving with him and building with him, can that fee be applied toward the general contractor fee? If he says yes, then you can probably move forward with it. But if he says no, then he's nickel and diming you, and that's a red flag. Okay, David B. How much more would it cost to build a 484 square foot garage off a house over attached to a house? I'm thinking a detached garage, if you get an EV, would be a good idea, since they do catch fire sometimes. That's a hard question. If you go to the First Steps course, the module 3 is where it's going to help you the most. You do that module 3, and it will tell you the cost per square foot in your market area. And then you can determine whether or not you can afford that. So, yeah, John White. Keith, have you ever done or considered ready frame from Builders First? All dimensional lumber, pre-cut and laser labeled and bundled by room. I've heard of it. I haven't heard any real pros and cons on it. It's kind of a build by numbers concept that you really can't go wrong on. However, you want to keep the design simple. If the design gets to be overly complicated, you're going to spend all your time trying to find a matching piece somewhere, and you're not going to find it. You'll get frustrated. You go start cutting lumber. And so that's really for a real simple, very modest, very easy, small square footage home. It's not for something that I would say that could be 3,000 or 4,000 square feet on some of the homes I've seen owner builders build. I don't know. I don't use it because I just want to grab a 2x4 and cut it and put it in. I don't want to go search for a number to match it with something else. It supposedly helps cut down the cut waste, but if you're smart in your design and you're smart with your framing, you can eliminate some of that cut waste anyway. And what happens when that lumber gets cut wrong or gets nailed wrong and they rip it out, then it's toast, and you're going to have to get some new lumber anyway. So I don't know if it's worth the cost. I just don't know it. The cost benefit analysis on that just seems more negative than positive for me. So, okay, next question. What is your preferred foundation type and why? I personally hate crawl space because it feels hollow when walking on it, but I know builders like it because they can work on plumbing easily. Depends on if you insulate it. I just did a Pioneer home up north, and we put 4 inches of rock wool underneath that foundation. You cannot feel that it's going to crawl space. I walked in a home and inspected a home with my wife many years ago, and I walked through there, and it was really deceptive to me, and I couldn't quite tell if it was on a crawl space or slab. But eventually, I was able. Oh, yeah, this is a crawl space. But if it's done right, well insulated, your subfloor is done right, you really won't tell. I prefer a crawl space in colder climates because I've done 2 big remodels this year, and I had to cut concrete in both of them to move plumbing. It wasn't easy, and for that alone, it wouldn't be bad to have crawl space. But I build in slab kingdom. We're the zero threshold, slab on grade, everywhere you look, basically where I'm building right now. And I've built a lot of stem walls, quite a few, in fact. And if I'm in a colder climate, I'd probably want a stem wall. So that would be my preferred. But if I'm in a warmer climate and my grade is pretty level, I'd probably do a slab on grade. Mr. Independent, now that's a cool name. What do you think about spray foam, the attic ceiling and walls? I've had a lot of students ask me this over the years. I don't like it. I do not like closed cell foam, especially on the under deck of a roof. If you have a leak in that roof and you've got spray foam underneath that roof, and if that leak happens, it will start to rot and you'll never see it. You will have to strip the entire roof just to see the leak because you've got closed cell. Keep in mind, closed cell means it's non-porous. There's no air, no water getting through it. It's just going to leak and sit on top of that and eventually go to the eaves and maybe even go down to the substrate of the home. So I like to know that if there's a leak, I can spot it and see it. That's the first thing I like. Second of all, I like my homes to breathe, and a lot of you know that. I'm a breathing builder. I love to make sure that my homes breathe because I have seen, I've just finished a major 150-year-old Pioneer home. Most of the structural elements are done. That home was wood on dirt, literally wood on dirt, but there was no insulation on that home. There was some dry rot in a lot of spots, and there were some timbers that were really gone. But there were other areas of that home, because there was constant air movement, nothing happened to it. Plus, it was all cedar, which makes it even better. Like cedar's like redwood. It just doesn't rot. So the answer to your question is I don't like that synthetic stuff in my home. I'd rather have it breathe. I'd rather put rock wool on my walls and even put it in the ceiling because it's a natural product and it's mold proof, fireproof, and it's breathable. If it's the insulation you're looking for, do something with more natural quality to it rather than synthetic or that stuff. And when it burns, you can't replace it. It's smoke everywhere. I'll say no more.
This goes along with the
A good question. John White says, how do you air seal above your mud sill if you don't use closed cell there? I use a liquid applied product. There's a not Red Guard, but there's a stick and peel tape, kind of like a Bitcha thing. And you can use that, but I love a liquid applied where I really goop it on with primer. Then there's a felt mesh product that you put over that, you roll it over that, and you put another goop of primer over that. And then you can actually do a finished color coat on top of all that. I never have any problems with that. The benefit is if there's a flood on the home and it comes up against that home, that water is not going to get inside that home. It may come in through the doorways, but it's not going to get in underneath that seal. And I'm stopping all air and bugs. You're thinking about two things, air and bugs. And that bottom seal is the biggest notorious spot for airflow movement under the house. When you've got your air pushing out, if you were to take up the baseboard, just peel the baseboard up, you get down low enough, you're going to see air gaps. And that's what you want to seal on the outside of it. And so you do that, you're going to seal it up. But I look for that transition 5 inches above the foundation and 5 inches below the foundation. So there's that little gap between there. That's what you want to seal up. And I do that on the outside of the building. John White, have you ever used concrete or metal decking for any house? a ceiling on an excavated garage. I just did as a video. I did a site visit of another builder who was dealing with a literal river that running under the home, and they put it on piers, and it's still being dealt with today to this day, but it's on piers, and the whole garage is concrete, big, thick corrugated metal, and they just pour concrete on there. So I've seen it done. I'm not afraid of it. I've seen a lot of people do it. I wouldn't recommend it, but I know that on some nasty hills, ski slope areas, they're done a lot of the time because they're trying to utilize as much space as they can, and the only way to do that is to have living space under the garage, which means you've got to have that concrete structure over the garage. So I've seen it done. Do you ever do ESP with drain screen behind it? I've done a lot of drain screens. I've not done the ESP yet, but I'm a big believer of rain screens. So I think what you mean is a rain screen, not a drain screen, but a rain screen, if I'm correct, behind the wall structure, behind your exterior covering on a wall. There's that air gap, and that air gap is a rain screen, if that's what you're talking about. Slava, welcome, Slava. What do you think about hempcrete housing and building your own hempcrete hole? I'd love it. The only caveat I have with hempcrete, it's the same problem I have with aerated concrete. It's very lightweight and it's hard to nail stuff to. And so I like something a little more rigid. Now, I think hempcrete's going to come a long way down the road, just like ICFs has come along. ICF block or styrofoam blocks have a rigid plastic structure inside it. So you can literally screw a fascia board or some sort of an exterior covering to that block without any problem. With hempcrete, they're adding a little Portland cement to it to give it some rigidity to it, but I think they have a little ways to go. I love the idea. I think that there's a hempcrete that you can compact, just like compacted earth homes. You just have to build a form literally, and you mix the product and you pour it in there and you stamp it in there, literally stamp it in there. And when it's done, it's basically a rot proof and mold proof home. And that's also pretty much fireproof. And the insulation density on that is pretty cool. There's no need for thermal breaking because the entire wall is basically a thermal break. So I think that technology is going to come a long way. It's just know-how. It's a skill level that if you want to learn it, then you can learn it. But if you're expecting somebody else to learn it, that's where the price starts to hit you upside the head. David B., spray foam hides leaks. Yes. Fiberglass falls apart if it gets wet. Yes. Stone wool doesn't have either problem. Correct. That's a good way to put it. Especially if it's semi-rigid rock wool. There's rock wool that's not so rigid and some that is less rigid. And if you're going to deck something underneath your house, do semi-rigid rock wool. Sometimes that's a special order product. Rovalier 63. Rover, I hope I said that right. Just got my HELOC and working with an architect. As an older builder, do I have to show evidence that a licensed electrician and plumber performed or certified the work? I plan to do most myself. Yes and no. If you sell it, typically within 2 years, it has to be certified. If you're going to hold it for longer than that, typically you can do everything yourself. That's the way most states are with owner builders. Now, when you pull a permit, they're going to ask you typically to put on that permit who is the HVAC contractor, who is the plumbing contractor, and who is the electrician contractor. They're going to ask for that. And so a lot of places, but even though they ask for it, you can typically do it yourself, but check your state requirements. Check your local permitting office. Go in and ask them. I have this guy, he's my electrician, but I'm going to do my work myself. Is that okay? Just confirm with him. Okay. Let's See, next question. Bradley James. Hey, Keith, I found a lender willing to do an owner builder loan, but they only do adjustable rate mortgages. Does an ARM make sense in today's market? If so, would a 5-1, 7-1, 10-1, or 15-1 be best? What do you think, honey? I'm going to ask my wife that question.
Oh, I better come back to that one.
Yeah, come back to.
Because that's a lender question that we need to find out.
How long do you think you'd have the ARM? How long, if you think it's just during the course of construction and then you'll refinance later?
Which I highly recommend because I don't recommend ARMs.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend. So now the only gamble you have is, let's say, for example, you get the HELOC now and it's an ARM and then you get it built, but you don't get it built until fall of next year or even the following year, 2025, and interest rates go skyrocketing again. Now you're stuck with refinancing with a high interest rate. So you've got to plan that out. Can you lock the permanent financing in later and know you can get the interest rate you want? So it's just a little bit of a gamble.
It pushes you to get things done.
It pushes you to get things done. That's a good point my wife made. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch. Sorry.
If you eschew closed cell and like houses to breathe, what are your blower tests coming in at? They're coming in pretty high. And I have not failed a blower door test, mainly because I'm sealing the transition on the outside of bottom plate between the foundation and the structure. I have found if you seal that up really, really well, and if you also seal up all your plugs, your outlets, especially your exterior outlets, then you shouldn't have a problem with the blower door test. When my electrician comes in, I literally go and buy 1 or 2 cans of rigid foam. That's the only time I buy this stuff. And I've literally foamed the inside of the box and cover the electrical box, penetrating the outside wall. When I do that and I seal the bottom plate, I've sealed the 2 main culprits of a leaky house. And when I do that, I'm pretty much on top of it. Okay.
Back to the lender question, I would say depending on what the payment's going to be and what they could afford.
Yeah, back to the lender question based upon the payments and what they can afford. That's my wife was making that comment. Roverly, I can't say that. I wanted one of those eyes looks like an L. So I want to say Roverlia, but it's Roveria. Or hope I said that right. My soil is very sandy. I'm building monolithic slabs. What should I expect to prep prior to the pour? You're going to want to take a lot of water on that sand. I mean, a ton of water. When you compact that basically sandy soil, the more water you have, the higher your compaction rating. I got a 98% compaction on a garage that I literally built on sand. And we had like 3 or 4 feet of sand. And the geotech guy came and he says, I've never seen a compaction test this hard. And I go, it won't be that way in 3 hours when the sun hits it and it dissolves that. But I did get that compaction. Now, before they pour it, wet that sucker down. I mean, wet it down. Think in mind that the sand has little gaps in it. It's not like clay that compacts. It's sand, which means it's porous. It's great for gardens. It's great for growing watermelon. Put a lot of fertilizer in there. It's going to do great. But for building, you have to really compact it and compact it well. And it's going to take a lot of water. You'll see when you put water on it, you'll soak it down really, really, really fast. And so I literally had to be there when my geotech was there, and I watered it for 2 hours before he arrived. He arrived, and I passed the test with flying colors. I'm done. I was good. However, because I was prepping it for a concrete guy to come in. I said to my owner, make sure you let that water run all night long. He did. He ran the water all night long. And I said, just turn it off an hour before they start to trench. And they started to trench, and it was a clean trench. If they didn't do that and they were going to trench the footings in just loose, dry sand, it sloughs off and it requires a ton more concrete. It's like when you go to the beach and you build a sandcastle closer to where the water is, it's damp and moist. and it's compactable and it can maintain its form and structure. But higher up on the beach, it can't maintain that structure. There's no moisture in it. That's what I'm talking about. And if you time it right and do it just right, you can avoid excessive costs in concrete. You can hit your compaction just right, and it'll be a sweet thing. But it's a babysitting. It's a babysitting thing with sand. Wally, I purchased a house in mid-2023 for demolition and new construction. Does the 2-year ownership rule for owner builder start from the land purchase date or post-construction? It's when you pull the permit, or actually it's from the date you get a certificate of occupancy. Typically, that's the ticking that occurs. But check with your state. Find out from them. It's usually the date of your CO. Hype Stonks. Hey, Hype Stonks. Haven't seen you in a while. Welcome back. Do you install rebar in slabs or only in the footings? My plans call for fiber mesh in the slab and number 5 rebar in the footings. This is being built in Florida with block walls. A couple of things. This is just my own take. I'm not your engineer, but I do rebar in both the slab and in the footings, but I do not do the mesh. That's too small of a gauge for me. I would go with a number 3 rebar for the mesh, or even number 3 or 4 rebar inside the slab. You're in Florida, you might have groundwater issues. You want that slab to maintain its strength a little better than that mesh. I'm not a fan of the mesh. And then the rebar, in the footings, definitely in the footings. This is being built in Florida. Best of luck with that. Mr. Independent, have you ever used 5/8 sheetrock throughout the house instead of 1/2 inch? Is 5/8 better? It's a cost that you don't need because it's not going to really, you're not even getting a 1 R value from that. Not even 1 R, not even a 1/2 an R value, if I'm correct. I wouldn't waste my money with that. I would put money inside the insulation of the walls, like a SoundTech product for sound buffering, especially in interior walls. And I'd put your money there and not put that extra thick drywall. If you did do it anywhere, it wouldn't be bad just to do it on the ceiling. It'd give it a little more strength, a little more shear strength, and it'd give you a little bit of more, just a hair of R value, but not much. But I wouldn't waste your money on that. It's mainly used for garages, for fireproofing, and for firewalls between twin homes. That's basically what that thicker drywall is for.
This was a comment made.
David B. Consider timber HP wood fiber, less than rock wool, easy to work with, and very hygroscopic or absurdism. Distributes and relaxes any water vapor, very advantageous. Timber HP. I need to go back to that one, sweetie.
Sorry.
I want to take a picture of that. It's something for me to research. I'll look into that. Thank you. I do know there's a fireproofing on some of that wood chip products that are out there, which is pretty good stuff. John White, do you seal top plate, tile it into your exterior vapor barrier? Tie it. I found that's a big culprit during winter. Yes. Do you seal top plate? Yes. I like the seal. It's like a pink foam. Sometimes it's white, and it's typically about 4.5 inches wide. And you unroll it and you put it down. I like that because I don't like liquid nails. Liquid nails gets very brittle over time, and it can crack. And when that happens, you don't have a good you have air gaps inside your plate, and then you never have enough liquid nails. I've seen guys just put a droplet along, just a single bead down, and they think that the bolts are going to hold everything down, the J bolts. I don't like that. I like just the foam unrolled seal. It's called seal, and it's in a pink or white roll that you unroll. And I like that better. And it wouldn't be a problem just to put 2 of those down. If you have some undulations in your stem wall that might be a little bit off, just go ahead and put 2 of those down, and then put your green plate down and bolt that sucker down. And it's gonna really help out quite a bit. Have you used any heat pump water heaters? You have to explain what a heat pump is. A heat pump is taking heat from the atmosphere and compressing it and putting it inside the home, basically. That's basically what a heat is. If you go even into Alaska, and it could be minus 30 degrees, all right, there's still heat in the atmosphere. It's hard to believe, but there's still heat. So it's actually taking what's left in the atmosphere and putting it in the home. Now, it works better for milder climates. So the colder it is, the less efficient, this from my knowledge, that would be. But yeah, you could. There's some efficiency there. It's just a matter of eventually you get down to a zero return. And when you go out into outer space, and I forget what temperature it has to be, where there's literally no heat. I mean, literally no heat left to suck out of the vacuum. And the closer you get to that zero threshold, that 0 point threshold, but there's no return on it, then it's not as efficient. But for example, if you're in Texas and it's 105 degrees outside, oh yeah, they're going to grab all that heat they can, put it inside the home and heat up stuff. So it depends on your environment, really.
So the last question before that, he was referring to a top plate, not a mud plate.
Oh, top plate. Not really. That's a good question. Sorry, I missed out on that top plate. Yeah, put that back up. No, I don't do anything on the top plate. There's not needed there at all. It's not gonna do any good to do that at all, because if this is your top plate and you've got a roof truss sitting on it, well, you've got all this other space there, 2 feet on center. That truss, another truss every 2 feet or thereabout. Well, if you have some seal plate there, it's not going to help you. You're going to have airflow going in and over the eave as well. So there's no need to seal that up. If you're thinking about insulation and packing that in, to a degree, yes, but there's some air vents. What do you call them? Not bats, but they're called vents. Attic vents is what they are, I think. And you can literally, they're about that thick, not that thick, but they have an air gap inside them. So you staple them between the trusses and you can have airflow going between the substrate of the roof sheeting and that vent. You have airflow going in there, and now you can pack insulation all the way in there. And that's what that's for. So you have the airflow, but you also have the opportunity to pack a lot of insulation near and over that eave, because that's the culprit for ice damming. And so if you can stop heat from getting too close to that roof near the top plate of the home, and you can stop that air movement, you can stop ice damming from happening. So
he says baffles.
Baffles, yes, baffles. That's a better way to put it. Baffles. I'm a big fan. I've got them in my house. I've got baffles in the upper attic up there, so I've got airflow coming up and over. Alex R., what type of water heater do you recommend? Gas or electric? Gas. We live in the Rocky Mountain area, and gas is plentiful and it's cheap. And I would always go with gas. Now, Europe, everything's electric, so all your water heaters are electric. But if you had a choice and you had gas, especially natural gas, not propane, if it's propane, then I'd think twice. But if it's natural gas, yes, it's going to be cheaper to run. And it's going to be hotter. And you're not going to have any elements of mechanical breakdown with gas. I've got a water heater inside my house there. It's been there for almost 20 years now. Hasn't broke down at all. We had one panel that we broke on it, replaced it, but it's been there that long. I'm gathering quotes now. A good tip is to use ProDesk at Home Depot or Lowe's. Window quote, they took off 27% after running it through ProDesk. I'm also checking with Lumberyard too. Yes, here's a little trick. You can get bids from lumberyards and then take the bid and just go right to the ProDesk and say, can you guys give me a bid on these numbers? Not these numbers, but these items that I need for my home. And then you can do a real cross examination of the real cost. But the ProDesk will not give you a takeoff. They don't do that. Now they have resources maybe where they can hire out to do it for you. But I just did a job where I had of the Pro Desk give me a breakdown of everything, and they included things that the concrete the contractor was going to do, and I didn't need that. They included all kinds of ridiculous things. They didn't focus on the lumber, so be careful on that. They'll look at the whole home and look at all the things you need, and not realize that that's going to be dealt with by that subcontractor, and that's going to be dealt with by that subcontractor. You just need the tie downs, lumbers, and the lumber package, etc. So,
Okay, this is it. He's got a Land Rover, a 1963 Land Rover. So it's
a 63 Land Rover. Okay.
2A.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've got a friend who loves Land Rovers, loves them. He loves to work on them. For 1 bedroom, 1 bath apartments, homes should I go for tankless water heaters?
They do have a Land Rover.
They do.
They're
They're
smaller.
smaller, but that's going to be a larger cost. I have a apartment complex I did. It's a 2-bedroom, a 2-unit apartment, 2 bedrooms above and 2 bedrooms above, down and above. I combined them both on one tankless water heater. So if you have a couple of little units or something you're putting together, you can combine those into one tankless
Well,
water
they have
heater.
cheaper ones that are small.
There's cheaper ones that are small, but they don't heat up fast enough unless you do recirculation inside the building. When your plumber talked to them about recirc, and if you do electric, just make sure you put it on a water softener. Same thing with gas. That's just the one thing that you're going to have to make sure you do is put them on a water softener. It will extend the life of those units quite a bit.
Adam really wants this question.
How much per year do GCs make that you know? I really enjoy construction, and would love to be a GC, but I'm concerned about leaving the security of a W-2 job. It depends on the person, depends on you. Don't quit your day job, but try to pick up something during the weekends. It takes a long time to build up the ability to make any kind of living as a GC. When I first started as a GC, I didn't think highly of myself. And so I charged 7% on the total cost to build. It ate me alive. And then I finally got to 10%, and I was still struggling. I could not make a living at it. I finally got to around 13%, and I could start to feel myself, I can do this. I can hire my daughter. I can hire other people. I can get the truck I need. And then I finally acquired some heavy equipment and a lot of tools, and now I lease those out. And now I was able to make some more money there. I'm finally now at 15%. And I have some opportunity, hopefully, to do some work up on the mountain. And when I do that, it'll jump to 20%. There's the Armchair, what's his name, is a YouTube channel. And I kind of like him. He's a little older than me. The Armchair something, can't remember his name. But he went through the same thing I went through. He says, it took me forever to finally get to 20%. He's now at 20%, and he's still a builder in his mid-60s. And that's where I want to get to, because that's where it's tapping into all that I have over many years of experience. And then I can only take the jobs I really want. So it's going to take you a while to get to that point. And that's the challenge, is how many years do you have to be able to get to that? And the other thing is, I could talk forever about this, but you need to be able to do one or two things very well, and that you can master it so that you can control costs. Like, you can charge 10%, but are you doing the excavation? If you're doing the excavation, you can control costs and bring in more revenue into your business. So I should just do another channel, how to be a general contractor, or how to start a subcontractor or a general contractor or something like that. I could help a lot of people. Okay. Okay, two more questions. We've got 1 or 2 more minutes. Hypes asks, Lowe's beat all of the lumber yards in my area. They will. Lowe's and Home Depot will beat your lumber yards.
And these are just statements. This one is from eBay.
John White asked about a heat pump water heater, as in it's not resistive of electric or gas flame, but a heat pump for the water heater, as in your hot water to take a bath. Yeah.
Remember that question?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. We're done.
Hey, thanks everyone. This is the last little live chat for this year, 2023. I look forward to many live chats for next year. Save your questions. We'll be here every Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And I look forward to seeing you guys then. This has been fun answering a lot of questions. And I hope that was helpful. And I have now one or two more checklists I need to actually consider. I have a couple of line items I need to add for excavation because of some questions that came up today. So again, like, subscribe, go to howtobuildyourownhome.com. If you're just starting, just looking into this whole thing, being an owner builder, take the First Steps course. It's very eye-opening. I did post we did 2 videos today. One's coming out Tuesday. Make sure you watch that. It's going to be a very eye-opening, very helpful video on how small can I really build, and that's going to wake you up to what you really could do over time. It's what the pioneers did. I actually went through the phases of an old home and how they built this first and then this next and then that next, and that's how they were able to do it with no debt, no lending or anything like that, because they didn't have banks to help them out. They had to do it on their own. So that video is coming out on Tuesday. Make sure you subscribe to How to Build Your Own Home on YouTube and check it out. And again, I'll see you at howtobuildyourownhome.com. This is Keith. See you guys later.